Oh boy, do we have a show for everybody today. I'm super excited. I know Jim, for one, has been in suspense for weeks because
I'm so excited.
right, this is the show. It's an unboxing. This is actually the very first unboxing we've ever done on Continuing Conversations. Isn't that right, Jim?
I believe so.
Okay, so for those who are new, you're probably also noticing, if you're watching the video cast right now, that we have an extra special guest today. Before we get into that, for those of you who have never watched Continuing Conversations before or listened to it, we're all about Star Trek Adventures RPG, which in my biased opinion is the best RPG on the planet for a million reasons. Okay, you can contest me on that wherever you want on social media. I'm Michael Dismuke. I am a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG right now. And I'm also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, which is super fun. One of the best jobs I've ever had. Jim, why don't you introduce yourself before we get to our special guest?
Sure thing. My name is Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for Star Trek Adventures RPG by Modiphius Entertainment. And I agree with you, Michael. This is the best freelance job I've ever had. So I got lucky. So happy to be here.
I think so. Look, even the Gorns are happy in my picture. And you never see happy Gorns, so this is really good. All right, and now we get to introduce Casey Hardy for a special reason. We've invited her on the show, but Casey, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us your background with Star Trek RPG and actually just RPG.
Yeah, hey everybody. So my name's Casey Hardy. My background is in all types of role play, but mostly what I do is live action role play and cosplay and anything that lets me get my hands dirty with interactive stuff in role play. So I'm really excited to be here for this unboxing because there's some really cool features that I would like to get my hands on and talk about how you can make your role play more interactive at the table.
Oh, awesome. Casey, you're going to be a fantastic addition. I think one of the biggest things we talk about at Star Trek with Star Trek Adventures is for years, people have been intimidated to maybe join an RPG or even to start even watching Star Trek because they're like, oh, there's so much canon. But one of the biggest things we push here, I know with both Modiphius and the Star Trek Adventures line and Continuing Conversations and Continuing Mission is no. This game is so wide open. When you have an entire universe, there's infinite diversity and infinite combination. And that includes the way you play RPG, including LARPing, which is very popular. And anybody who watched Hawkeye in Marvel just saw how LARPing just took off, right? So today, what we're going to do is this. I was like, how do we format this since we're talking about different types of RPG? Well, one of the happiest things I'm able to say is Jim has an unopened Tricorder set. Okay, so we're starting with announcing the Tricorder set has been out for how long now, Jim?
The box, the UK got it a couple months ago because they were able to clear customs faster than the United States. But United States got it, 2 weeks ago, I think, and started shipping it from the distributor. So it's just hitting stores now and conventions and all that great stuff.
Okay, now let's talk about what's groundbreaking, kind of historical, because I have mine and I've been shoving it in your face for weeks, showing it off that you don't have it, and I did. So why don't you talk to us about why the Tricorder set is so special?
Why is it so special? Well, because from almost from the beginning, when we started working on the game back in 2016, 2017, we were developing the game and we knew we wanted to make a big deal out of it because there hadn't been a Star Trek RPG for 14 years or something. And we were developing this gigantically massive Borg cube box on launch. It was going to be the Borg cube. It was going to be full of books, full of miniatures, full of dice, tokens, all that stuff. And it was just going to be this gigantic thing, right? And it was so cool when it came out, and a lot of people loved it. And it was called like the best gaming box ever released for any game ever because it was just so massive, right? But like hot on the tails of that release, we knew we wanted to do something cool for the original series fans, and we took some time to think about it, and we finally narrowed it down to we would want it to be a tricorder box with stuff inside it, all kinds of cool stuff inside it. And so we started developing that, pretty much right after the game launched in 2017, and just through a wide variety of circumstances and issues, it took years and years of development. I mean, really, the development itself didn't take that long. But just to get it through the the challenges of global production in China and then COVID and everything else it just went on and on and on. And we just could not get it off our plate, you know. But finally we got it into the production at the right time, and fortunately it navigated COVID. And you know, it took, I mean, it's late in global terms because of all the challenges with the global supply chain and COVID and shutting down ports and factories. And I mean, the list goes on. I could spend an hour here telling you about all the BS that we had to deal with to get this
worth the wait. I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's worth the wait, and we're gonna have you unbox it. I'm gonna talk about my players' experiences with it. I do want to ask Casey right now, though. Casey, from a LARPing point of view, why is this tricorder box so cool to you?
Oh, it's totally interactive, and I am addicted to storage containers. But you can hold it, you can use it as part of your role play. It looks like the real thing. Anybody who's a fan of the original series knows, like way back in the day, one of the first toy sets that they released was the landing party set. And you got your tricorder, and you got your phaser, and you got your communicator. Yep. That's what everybody wants to get their hands on. So it's awesome.
Yep.
I was telling in a previous one, I've been scanning my wife with it. So I've been walking around the house like, how are you feeling? Actually, don't tell me, I'll tell you. Yeah, press with the diodes. That's
Casey, I love that you brought up the landing party set, because way back in the 70s when I was a kid, that was my introduction to Star Trek. Actually, is I think one of my friends on the playground had that set, and so we would spend hours, you know, we didn't even really know who Kirk and Spock and McCoy were, right? But like, we had the sense, and we saw pictures or something, I don't remember, but we would run around, you know, playing Star Trek before we were actually watching the episodes. But that landing party set has a special spot in my memory for all the good times with Star Trek. And the Tricorder set certainly harkens back to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, like you were mentioning, you had new players at your table experiencing this for the first time.
Yeah.
I bet they picked it up and immediately knew what it was for, right? It's a scanning device. It probably makes weird noises.
They did. They were scanning our whiskey collection. We did a whiskey tasting. They were all over it. So Casey, I have to ask you, do you have the landing party set, the original one?
No, I don't. Most of my original props and replicas are from TNG on. I haven't gotten my hands on a lot of original stuff because honestly, there's a hot market for that. I'm a big replica collector and people want that stuff. Now, I might step away for a minute. I actually do have a phaser, not a tricorder, not a communicator, but one of the really nice ones that lights up and makes noises. And I use that for LARP and for cosplay because it's something that's interactive. People can see the lights light up, they can react to it. It's a lot of fun and you don't have to instruct them. It's just very natural play. Something buzzes and makes a light at you, you're going to know what to do with that.
Yeah, I think that. And we were talking about this too, because there was some conversation on these are collector items. I just want to say they are collector items. You know, some people are waiting for the PDFs. I see that conversation happening, but I have to say, and I didn't mention this last time, Jim, when we were talking about it, you know, definitely budget is an issue, but I tell everyone in life, especially my nieces and nephew, when they're like, well, can I afford this and can I not? I ask them how often they have Starbucks or Pete's coffee in a month. I'm like, okay, if you sacrificed 5 Starbucks, is that worth having? And they're like, yeah, actually it is, you know, and even when they want to purchase sneakers or whatever. So I have to say, I remind people that this is definitely a collector's item. And to your point, Casey, is boy, if we could have the original landing party set, how happy would we have if we had picked that up when we had time? And I'm not doing the sales thing because I'm a minimalist, but I do like good art. And we're going to be talking about the art in this book and how it's put together, even how the binding is made in the box, what it's made out of, because people have been asking that question on social media. A lot to talk about today. Okay, so we're really going to dig into it. What I'm going to really appreciate watching now is Jim, you taking this package and unwrapping it. Keeping in mind, we're doing a podcast, so you're going to have to be super descriptive as to.
I can manage. Yeah. Although I will note, Michael, I don't know if you have an outline or something somewhere, but I don't know if it's suitable for this conversation, but I would love to get Casey's input too. We should talk about at some point the sheer amount of value that's in an RPG. Right, it doesn't have to be about Star Trek, but like when you buy a core rule book, right? How much value is in that thing in terms of like its playability and its replay value and all that stuff?
We're totally talking about that today. That's totally appropriate.
You were talking about the coffee thing, and it was like, yes, coffee. There's no value in coffee. Like 10 minutes and it's gone, and it's very ephemeral, right? But an RPG book, when you've got it in your, I mean, it's the same thing with computer games. Honestly, you can spend $30 on a computer game and get 300, 400 hours out of it. That's huge value, right? Anyway,
yeah, and I want to point out the reason we're mentioning this is not because of sales, because believe me, I've had to convince so many people over 3 decades about the power of RPG. It's an art form. It's like buying a guitar. You're not going to regret it if you play it every day.
Right.
It's going to give you enjoyment, whether it gives you money back in a sense, right? And so I do want to have that conversation, including with Casey, about LARPing and the value artistically and socially and emotionally and mentally of RPG. This is the perfect conversation for it. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
All
right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So for those of you who aren't on video, right, I've got this gigantic freaking box. This is probably like I don't know. This is probably like a 16 by 16 packing box. I got this from my post office box last week. Actually, no, it's been 2 weeks now. It's been 2 weeks, Michael. I've waited 2 weeks.
You're patient. I'm not that patient. You know me. I'm always very impatient.
So there's a little flyer in here from the top for Skyrim, the board game coming out pretty soon. Don't mean to be a plug, but it was on the top of the box. So that's coming out soon. A whole bunch of biodegradable packing material, always nice. And
is it biodegradable? Wait, is it? What? Is it really biodegradable packing material?
Yeah, this stuff. If you put it in water, it'll dissolve.
You mean I can put that into my compost bin?
Yeah, it's corn.
I didn't know that. I've been throwing it away. Oh Lord, I could give it to my worms. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Anyway, so holy cow! Wow, this is massive. Wow, this is a lot bigger than I was expecting it to be. Like, and this is the challenge. And I talked about this before with the Shackleton book. The challenge that I've always run into when I work on these books, I always see the Word documents and then the PDFs, right? And when I'm working on PDF, like, it'll say it's a US letter size book, or it'll say it's a Royal Digest size book or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. But I don't appreciate the dimensions of it until I physically have it in hand, right? So like for 4 years now, I've been looking at, like, this is the fly sheet that we packaged so that you can see what we were selling, right, without opening it. I always assumed this was just a US letter size piece of paper, right? It didn't, I mean, I knew what the dimensions were, but it didn't mentally register until I actually saw the thing in hand. And like, this is a massive.
Well, I have to ask a question about it. I actually have a question. And I don't know, is this, I'm for those who are not watching, I'm actually wearing it around my neck like McCoy. I already unpacked mine because I couldn't wait. I'm notoriously impatient and impulsive. But I have to ask, is this the same size as the TV show? Was there any consideration with that when you were designing it?
I honestly don't remember. It's been so long now, I don't recall. I'm sure that probably played into it somehow, but I think the realities of the available sizes of books probably had an impact too. So we probably had to find that happy balance between the authentic prop versus what format we were going to put the books into. There's probably like a happy medium there somewhere. Great question though, Michael. I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you. It feels a little bit big, but you know what's funny is I know that there's another company working on a prop accurate version of the tricorder with all the licensed sound and effects and stuff. I'll be curious to see what theirs looks like compared to our side in terms of sizing and stuff. I know it's just not available yet. So anecdotally, I don't have the whole story, but I know that the designer who did the design layout, right, the graphic that's on this thing that makes it look like a tricorder, anecdotally, I heard he put a ton amount of research into like finding pictures that were good enough that he could base the design on so that it looks accurate, so that you look at this from across the room, you know this is a original series tricorder, right? So I know he put a lot of work into it. And now I'm opening the flap, and okay, so he did a great job on the interior design with the screen and the little grill and the buttons and whatever these discs are.
Do we know that those are is that pretty accurate to the original series? Casey, you have any take on that? Do you know?
Yeah, like immediately that the tri.
Casey, I'm going to ask you to repeat that real quick. 1 second. Your audio is going in and out. It could be your headset's connection. And I'll give a shout out to Studio Tembo right now, who is our editor, who does miraculous things when this happens. So always got to give a shout out to Jeff Harvey, who does all our editing for.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you sound super clear now.
Okay, awesome. So what was I saying?
So I was asking you about the artwork inside the tricorder artwork and the screen and the buttons. How does that compare to the original series?
Yeah, it looks somewhere between the actual screenshot of the original series and one of the ones that you might have seen on the animated series. Like, it's this lovely blend of 3D and 2D art. It's immediately recognizable as the tricorder. Like, you could show that to anybody and they would know exactly what that is.
Awesome. That's so cool. And what are those little diodes at the bottom? I wasn't sure if these are like isolinear chipped.
No, they're like on the actual prop, they're these little silver, like, ribbed discs. They never really explain what they are. Science stuff, Star Trek science stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So while you were talking, I put myself on mute because I took the strap out of the box and I took the strap out of the cellophane. I didn't want to, it's really, really noisy cellophane, so I didn't want to, bother it with it too much with the noise. The strap, I'm really happy with this. One of the things about doing stuff like this is you are exposed to the number of options available to you for straps and stuff and whatever. And we must have gone through like 7 or 8 different strap options with the company. And initially, the one we selected was actually a nylon weave with the caps. And the more I looked at it, I was like, no, we need something that looks more leathery. Like the original strap was leather. It was narrow. It was, it had that very specific look. And so we actually went with an upgraded strap. I don't think this is leather. I think this is like some sort of vinyl composite or something.
Yeah, I
don't know all the materials really well.
Yeah, it feels like a vinyl. For people who are listening, the tricorder, if you watch the show, there's a strap so they could wear it around, kind of wear it like a little purse, a man purse as they were walking around. And so this is the strap that Jim's referring to right now.
But it looks really durable. Of course, it's black. It looks solid. The buckles are solid. Now, of course, the buckles, I'll be transparent and say that they're not accurate to the prop, because as much as we tried, like if you look at the actual prop, the strap is integral to the case. It goes actually inside the case. And like there was just no way to manufacture that in such a way that it would be durable, right? So we had to go with the rivets. If you look at the side of the box, there's rivets on the outside of the box. There's eyelets for the strap, and the rivet goes inside the box. And that was the best compromise we could come up with. So let
me ask a question that came up too, and maybe Casey, since you're an active LARPer, you could talk about it. So the composition of the box is a cardboard, and I do have to I have to say, I because I play with mine a lot, I had a little nick on mine. So Casey, any advice for LARPers when you're dealing with cardboard construction? What do you do about that?
Well, the good part about cardboard is it's really forgiving. So if you make a nick in something, I don't know, black, you can easily color that in with a Sharpie or paint over it. If you want to be gentle with it, obviously, as you said, it is a collector's piece. But if I were going to take that to Gen Con and go to a table game, I would have my uniform on. I would be wearing that around my neck, right? I mean, it looks super cool. If it gets a little banged up, that's just wear from your away missions. That's
cool. Life in Starfleet.
It makes it a little more realistic.
Well, in 2023, I plan to make my first run to cons, and I promise I'll be wearing this.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And Gen Con is such a press of people. Like just walking through the dealer room, you're going to get this thing scuffed up. I mean, you just can't avoid it. There's so many people that you have to kind of navigate your way through. So anyway, yeah.
So that's a little bit about the box. I did want to talk about that because people have asked, but it is durable. I wanted to let people know I did travel with it into the wine country, which is, of course, of California, one of the roughest places on earth, and it did survive the trip.
Yeah, so I could nitpick this all day, but like what I'm really happy with is, of course, the front of it. And those of you who can't see, the front of it opens up, and there's a little flap that opens, of course, to get into the stuff. There's actually 2 magnets that make the flap close on the front. And what I'm really impressed with, and this is something we were really worried about with the manufacturers, is that when the flap closes, there's a if you remember the design of the tricorder, there's a silver band on each side that goes vertically on each side of the tricorder. And we were worried, when that flap closes, are those lines going to be pretty well lined up, or are they going to be off kilter, off angle, or whatever? Mm-hmm. And they assured us they were going to get it right. And by goodness, it looks to me like they pretty much got it right, because like I've opened and closed it several times now, and it's the alignment is staying pretty true to form. And like, you know, I mention it because like I'm a little OCD, and I know that there are fans out there who would like totally fixate on that. So it seems to be pretty solid. Now, you know, after you know, opening and closing this thing a million times, you know, who knows where it's going to go. But that's
well, I got to say too, I didn't even notice the magnets till you pointed it out.
Yeah.
And so they're really built in. And now I visually can look at them because I had to search for them. But that was actually a really good design. It's so cool.
All right. So now I'm gonna tip it over here and let all the swag fall out of it. And I'll tell you an anecdote that I think I told you, Michael, at one point. Actually, I'll tell you two anecdotes. First anecdote is you'll notice that the inside of the box, of course, is just empty, right? But initially, the backing of the box was white, right? Because it's just the back of the box. We didn't really think twice about it. But when we saw the production sample and we saw the white, we were like, oh no, that's not going to work. Is there any way we can make that back black? And the guy was like, oh yeah, that's no issue at all. We just didn't know that you wanted it because it was white on the form. And so we said, no, please turn that to black. And it like immediately I can see it makes a huge difference, so that it doesn't look like I think the white background made it look like a box. And this looks a little bit more like a tricorder, I guess. Anyway, so that's one anecdote. The other anecdote is I joked about this with Sam, the former Star Trek line developer, for a while, but I had a secret wish for the tricorder, and I didn't know if it would ever work. But one of the things I thought would be amazing, and if we could have made it happen, was I would have loved, because like when I opened it up, I saw that all the books and the dice, there was still some room in here, even with the strap. I thought it would have been amazing if we could have gotten the factory to buy a whole bunch of those little craft puffs that you can get in different colors. Like they look like pom-poms. You could get like brown and tan and white and green and pink, all these different colors for craft pom-poms. I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get like a whole bunch of like 1/2 inch and 1 inch pom-poms in tan, brown, and white, and just stuff it, like put all the books, put all the dice in there, and then just stuff it full of all these pom-poms, so that when somebody, you know, takes the shrink wrap off and then pops this thing open, just this explosion of tribbles would come flying out.
That would have been awesome.
I was like, you know, if I'm a Star Trek fan, I would have completely lost my mind if that had happened, right? And then Casey, so what?
Yeah, let me ask Casey a question real quick. Oh no, sorry, go finish up, Jim. I want to finish up.
So I was just going to say, anybody who's buying this as a gift for somebody, if you can do it, if you can find a way to do it, like go to your local packing store, because they'll re-shrink wrap it for you. If you can, buy this thing, carefully take the shrink wrap off, open it, take the strap container, because like the strap is in a bag, right? So take the bag of the strap out, fill it with all these craft puffs that look like tribbles, and then carefully reseal it and get somebody to shrink wrap it for you. Because the fan that you're going to give this to, they will, like, if they don't already love you forever, they will love you forever. They will like do your bidding for a decade, because it's going to be so amazingly cool to open this thing and just have all these tribbles spill out everywhere. It would just be amazing.
This is actually a good gift now that you mentioned it. It's a good value gift too. To the truth, I have to ask Casey a question, since you're big into LARPing. You know, once you empty the box out, what would you do with this empty space here if you had the chance to use it? Any ideas?
So again, if I'm running a game, I'm a container nut. I've already thought about this. So like, I'm a huge fan of cool stuff to store dice in and extra props and stuff. So I go to thrift stores all the time, and I get things like, you know, an Apple Watch case looks super Star Trek-y, right? You can put your dice in it. So fill it up with all the gaming accessories that you want at your table. Make sure you've got your extra snacks in there or whatever for your away mission. But it's a beautiful multi-purpose. It's big enough to hold a lot of cool stuff. You could have your notebooks in there if you're the type of GM that likes to take notes about your campaign. Or there's actually this amazing 3D print item on Etsy that you can get that's a tricorder dice holder. You put your game dice in there. So just go full Inception. Put dice holders in the tricorder that look like tricorder. It's
do you have that, Jim? Jim
I don't have it printed out. I would have to send you guys a link, but it's pretty amazing.
I got a fan online did it on Etsy, and this is, of course, is the one. This is from Lower Decks, right? They got the purple stripe on it, and I was like, I've got to get it. It was a little expensive, but I love it, and I put my dice in it, right? But I wanted to grab these because I wanted to compare the dice, right? Because I'm going to open up the dice bag first.
Okay, first I want to say, Casey, great idea. I want to encourage people, again, what you were saying is there's so much you could do inside here with when the books are out of it too. And I was thinking about that. It's like, okay, you know, if you wanted to add more of the original stuff in there, that would be a cool space to build that in, especially with 3D printing nowadays.
If you had your landing kit, if you had your, you know, your communicator and your phaser, I think it would fit it perfectly.
Good point. Yeah, that's really cool. Fun stuff here, Jim. Okay, so now we've talked about the box. We've got just the packaging has already talked to us, but I think that there's some really cool design tips, or not design tips, I shouldn't say. There's design put into this all the way down to the dice. So do you want to start with the dice, Jim, before we talk about the gaming modules? Okay.
Yeah, we knew when we were doing the box that we wanted to do something special with the dice, because it wasn't going to be enough just to throw in the division dice, right? This is original series. We wanted this to be really special for the original series fans. And we thought, what in the world could we do that's different for the original series? And I think I was actually working my way through another rewatch of the original series at the time, right? Because I was just, you know, keeping my mind fresh on what it was. And like there was a whole bunch, and I forgot, when you watch episodes, you know, in isolation of each other, you don't really think about it. But watching the season from season 1 to season 2, you know, back to back to back, watching all 79 in a row, I realized that Kirk wore his green and gold tunic an awful lot, like more than I remembered. And I was like, that we got to figure out how to make that happen as a dice. And so we did these green dice. I don't know if the camera will show it too well, but they're green dice, really bright green with gold numbering on them that shows up really nicely. There's a good, this is a better contrast than I expected to see on them. And let me see, there's on the one face, of course, in Star Trek Adventures, ones are good, really good. So that we got the Delta, the Starfleet Delta on the one face, and then the 20 is just a regular old 20. That's, you know, nothing special there. But so we decided to put 5 of these in the box. So, you know, that's technically a full set, because any player, it's normally 2d20, but you can buy up to 3 more dice, so you can roll a max of 5 dice. We got to get all 5 dice in there. We got to give them an opportunity to have 5 dice. So we did that, and like I love this green color. That looks so good with the gold.
It's really elegant. I mean, honestly, I have too many dice over there to count in all kinds of different colors, and these are super elegant dice. They were fun to game with, and I don't know, for the players who it was their first time, I was able to explain to them the history behind the color of it, and they were like, oh, that's kind of deep. So I thought that was a really cool artistic choice.
Yeah, and then the challenge dice are D6s, and these are nothing surprising. These are pretty much the standard ones that we've been using for a while now. Although we did make a design change on them just to make them a little easier to read, because the original versions had like a star field on all of them, which looked cool, but we got a lot of fan feedback saying they're really kind of hard to read. Like the effect with a star field was kind of similar to a blank with the star field. It was kind of hard to tell what was an effect and what was just the star field background. So we decided to go with a cleaner design, and we put 10 of these in the box just because we were like, we want to get some maximum value in here. So you get 10 challenge dice, you get the five big honking D20s. And when I say that, like, you know, we just recently redid the division dice, and they're a nice size D20. And then we did Klingon dice, and the Klingon dice are actually a little bit bigger than, this wasn't intentional, just kind of how it worked out. The Klingon dice are a little bit bigger. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, yeah, you know, because the Klingons don't do anything small. They're always bigger than life.
They'd have it no other way, Jim.
But now the Kirk dice, the Kirk dice is actually a little bit bigger, even more than the I don't know if you can see this, but
of course,
the Kirk dice is actually a little bit even bigger. And I was like, well,
that pisses.
That wasn't intentional either, but it's totally appropriate, because like of all the Star Trek characters, like I don't think anybody is bigger than life than Kirk himself, right? So I think this is just, oh man, these are huge.
And I have to ask Casey, because I actually don't know. I've never LARPed before. During LARPing, do you use dice?
Well, it depends. Not usually. The type of LARPing I do, we're out in the woods beating each other up with foam weapons. It's your traditional like lightning bolt LARP. But there are all different kinds. There's even one that I might talk about later called Strange Gravity, that's like a Star Trek LARP that you can play in 4 hours. which by the way, this tricorder set would be super cool for. But sometimes you can use dice, or sometimes you can mix in LARPing techniques at your table to kind of add some conflict resolution variety if you don't want to roll dice. So it's really flexible. What is a dice? Just a tool to figure out what happens, right? So there are a lot of different ways to do that.
Okay, I definitely want to hear more about that. Let's go through that package. But before we end, I want to talk all about that, because for people who don't know LARPing, you know, I've talked before that RPG is another form of improv, another form of karaoke. So I want to totally get into that for people who may want to gradually move into trying that out. So I want to hear more about that game.
Yeah, I really want to talk about LARPing, because like Michael, the more you talk about how your games are primarily play by post on Discord, and like my experience playing the game, it's almost like a radio drama every week, right? Because literally we're just doing dialogue and conversation and narration back and forth. We roll dice from time to time, but like I can imagine in my head how easy it would be to translate Star Trek Adventures into a LARP, because like you and I talked about plenty of times where we have whole sessions where we don't roll the dice. We're just doing the drama and the narration and the conversations back and forth. And like Casey, I'd love to get your input into like, I mean, do you really need dice for certain games? Not really. I mean, I'd love to hear your opinions, of course. But I think I almost wonder if Star Trek Adventures might really well translate to that.
Well, I want to talk about that too. We're definitely going to talk about this before we have to talk about this, because even as we move into the metaverse, I'm seeing the potential for a lot more people bringing their games to life in innovative ways. And I think it'll become like virtual LARPing. That's what I'm thinking we're moving toward as a society. But anyways, we're going to talk about that at the end. Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize. I will admit I'm fondling my dice right now. It's the color. I mean, the gold is just reflecting off the light really nicely, and it's just an amazing. The green, like I don't see that many green D20s. Like just I prefer grays and blues, but this is a really nice die. I'm gonna put it down now, so I just stop.
I'm gonna say one more thing about the die, which is you guys did a really good job with that, because people think watching the series that the tunic's a gold tunic, and then if you actually go and look at the fabric, it's this really bright green. So you've even got the deep cut of like the proper color from the actual fabric, and it does. It really looks pretty stunning. I would probably steal those dice and use them for other things.
Nice. Yeah, these are great. Okay, so we talked about the box, we talked about the strap, we've talked about the dice. Okay, so then let's talk about the rest of the stuff that's in it. And what it is it's one big shrink wrapped, I guess, package of stuff. And I'm just going to crack it open here, because and while I'm doing that, I'll just tell you what's in it. It's the rules digest. It's the mini campaign. It's 2 sets of character sheets and reference sheets, and then it's a sheet of tokens. Michael, do you have any preference what order we start talking about these in?
Yes, because I first want to start, we're doing so good. I believe that any kind of narrative needs lulls. And so I'm going to break all our hearts right now. So I want you to know that, that I had placed my Tricorder set on my table. And then of course, nieces and nephews come over. And as they run around and just, for some reason, their bodies are magnets and pull valuable things toward them for no reason. And so my tokens got spread all over the floor, and my dog did this to it. So for those of you who are watching, they took one of my tokens and completely mangled my red alert token. All right, it's still good. It'll still play the game, but let's start with these tokens since I'm all depressed about this.
So tokens. So these are literally these are the exact same token sheets that we packaged in the starter set. So if you bought the starter set, you'll know that these are really high quality. I don't know if it's pressboard or cardboard, but it's solid. It's like you see in any board game, really, with the pop out.
But not dog proof, just so you know.
Not dog food, but you know, good luck stopping your dog.
Yeah.
Not dog proof, probably not cat proof either. But standard cardboard tokens, they pop right out of the thingy, and you can pop them right back in for storage if you so choose. I've seen people put these into coin holders, like the little round plastic coin holders, if you want to protect the cardboard. But I mean, why would you? It's cardboard. I mean, who cares, right? But some people do care, right? I'll acknowledge that. Like some people do want to keep this stuff pristine. So there's two cards of tokens. There you get 16, 20, 28. I can't do math. 26 red alert tokens. So that's threat for the game master, and then 6 momentum tokens. Those are the Federation symbol there. You got 6 of those for the players for momentum. It never occurred to us to do tokens for determination, mostly because each player only gets, 1 or 2 at most. So I guess that's a missed opportunity. We never really thought to do determination. So I guess maybe we'll correct that someday. But anyway, so two stacks of tokens.
Yeah, I do have to say that my players would say 26 threat tokens is not enough, but that's
Not
just
enough.
the way.
Yeah.
So Casey, and I didn't even ask, do you have a current STA game going on yourself?
Not right now. My last one ended last year. We were playing it, during the beginning and middle of quarantine. And we all kind of had to split off as our lives and careers changed. But it was a completely remote game. So nobody was in the room together. And I'll talk a little bit later about how you can use that to your advantage in kind of a LARPing context and how to make that more interactive. Since you can't be in the room with people, Star Trek is kind of perfect for that particular type of game.
Awesome.
Right? Yeah.
I love asking this question because we were talking about threat tokens. And so what's the most threat you've ever had in your hand?
Oh God, it had to have been like 12 or more, probably. Not a huge amount, but we did some dangerous stuff, right?
Mine was 41 is the record. I'm wondering if I'm the records right now.
I don't know if that's a lot or a little. I was trying to play very Star Trek, right? My captain was trying to solve problems with diplomacy and make sure to keep everybody safe. So, we tried to play it that way, but I did have some hotheads on my crew, so it didn't always work out.
I just like asking that question since we're talking tokens. All right, cool. So Jim, where are we at now with the unboxing? We got through the tokens. What are you staring at now?
I'm being OCD. So
first, you're drooling. So what's making
first I want to say that if you are a longtime book fan like I am, and you appreciate good quality of printed products, you'll know that like new books that have that new book smell. It's like a new car smell. It's that fresh ink. Oh, it smells so good. It reminds me back in the day when I had the blue mimeograph from high school and middle school. Like the teachers would do that old blue mimeograph stuff. It was on a crank, and you had ink on it, and the ink smelled amazing. And so you got the handouts during school, and like everybody wanted to be the kid to help the teacher hand out the paperwork because you got that cheap high off of the mimeograph ink. I mean, this is way back. This is way back in the early '80s, so that dates me quite a bit. But it's just that ink smell. It smells so good.
When there weren't dry erase markers available, you go for the mimeograph ink. Huh?
Right, because there weren't even dry. I mean, this is so far back. There wasn't dry erase markers yet, right? So we had chalk and erasers, and the erasers weren't fun because it was just chalk dust, right? And that didn't taste good or smell good. Anyway. I digress.
Elmer's, come on, we all ate Elmer's glue, don't we?
Yeah.
We all did.
So I'm going to start off with the cards. And while you were talking, I discovered that it comes with 2 packs of character cards and reference cards. There's 1 pack for the USS Lexington and crew, and then there's a pack for the Enterprise, the classic crew. And what I noticed is when I pulled this out is that there was no particular order to these cards, right? So I had to fix that, and because I'm so OCD, so you have the Lexington crew in 1 stack, which is here, and so that's the Lexington crew, and then you got the Enterprise crew. The Lexington crew is original to this box. We just made up some characters and made up some biographies about them and stuff. But one thing I want to do note here is how cool the colors came out. Like this is the red, right? And there's a nice fade on it here. So it's brighter on one side and then it fades to black on the other side. So that looks really cool. And then there's the same thing with the gold symbol on the Enterprise crew pack, but it's also on the Rules Digest. And then the campaign pack has the blue delta with the Spock and the science symbol in the front there. But I just thought the colors look great. They look good on PDF, but now they look great in print. And I'm just really impressed at what a great job the production company did on like translating this to print. So the cards, the different character sheets and cards, this is a really nice heavy card stock. This is like 130, maybe 140 weight, a nice solid, not flimsy at all. I would probably laminate these, just me being me. And I know that you can laminate it and trim that laminate down pretty close to the edge. And there's still plenty of room. They'll fit in the box without any issue if you laminate this. Even with like a 1/4 inch all the way around of laminate, these would still fit without any issue. And that would protect them from dings and wear and tear and stuff. Anyway,
talking real life, I just want to say what was really cool about these is my new players, when we did this last week,
Yeah.
What was really cool about the design of these, as I described them, is not only do you have the character sheets, but then you also have on the background of the Enterprise crew, instead of their pictures, because we pretty much know what they all look like, they actually have all the actions per your position on the ship. So it was cool because what I did is I laid it out for them kind of LCAR style. And I said, okay, this is what your character can do. And we laid it out in front of them and they had their character sheet. So I thought it was kind of cool that they're constantly able to look down. And I don't encourage people when they're playing to memorize these sheets. I ask them, what do you want to do? Don't look. What do you just want to do? And then I could refer them to the sheet. So that was a really good design on this I think a lot of people, I'm guessing, would end up playing their own characters or the Lexington crew, because most people want to make their own story, especially I encourage them if they don't know canon. But I think it's smart that you put behind the main characters, we all know, those action sheets, which worked out really well for my game with new players.
Yep, and those reference cards are very similar to the ones that we had in the Borg cube box, and then also in the starter set. We reformatted them to the original series aesthetics. But anyway, so you got the Lexington character sheet there, and then you've got 5 NPCs or 5 player characters. You got a captain, a first officer, an engineer, a doctor, and a science officer, and they all have original art that I think we were careful not to ever use this art in any of our products. So we've been sitting on this art for 5 years now. Not that that's super critical, but we knew we wanted to wait and save it for this set. And then, like you said, Michael, we've got the Enterprise crew. This was in a different form, slightly different format, available as a PDF. We sell the character crew packs as PDFs, but I think these are, I think the stats are the same. I don't remember now. Honestly, it's been so long. And then on the back, so here's Kirk, James T. Kirk, and then on the back is the commanding officer reference with some information. And then you got Scotty with a rules summary, just the basic rules summary. Sulu's got the same thing. Oh, he's got helm and navigation. So all the quick references here, because what we couldn't fit in here was a game master screen. There just wasn't room.
But what was cool about, let me tell you what was cool about that though. Again, this is real, because even, Star Trek characters are pop culture now. So people generally know what Sulu does and Scotty does, and what Kirk does and Spock and Uhura. So what was cool about it is that based on the character they chose to play in our mission, I was like, oh, okay, well, you're going to have communication control. You know Uhura, right? You know what she does in the movies. Yeah, I remember. Okay, flip it over and this is her job. And so to me, that made it easy that they could reference the character that's more pop culture, flip it over and say, oh yeah, this is the person's job. So again, I really like that design. We jumped into gaming after like 20 minutes of quick reference.
Yep, and for the purists among you, we were able to include a character sheet for Nurse Chapel, just because we want to give her some love. And there's a conflict momentum span on the back. And I just want to note again, the colors on these look really good. The greens and the yellows and the reds just really pop off of this paper. So I'm really impressed with the printing job. Like, I mean, we had nothing to do with the printing, right? That's not our thing. But yeah, so lots of cards here, really nicely done.
Yeah, Casey, what are you thinking so far?
These look so good. I am not a rules memorizer. I hate doing that. So having all of that right there on the characters that you already know allows you to shorthand a lot of stuff. And shorthanding in role play is also really important and convenient. If you're having to overload yourself remembering stats and how rules work, you're not going to think about playing your character and getting into the trouble that you ought to be getting into. So it really frees you up to react and act and then figure out what the consequences are when it's time.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, going back again, because we're going to be bridging over to LARPing, is I prefer that my players don't even look at their sheets or anything the whole time. I want them just to get into it. So this is called a rules digest, and I think it's actually living up to it so far as we go through those sheets for those purposes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, and still 2 more goodies in here. Jim,
I'll give you a little anecdote. This is the fly sheet that was packaged with it. This is CBS, Viacom CBS's new packaging for most Star Trek stuff. So if you're in a store looking at Star Trek stuff, you'll see this basic look and feel on most of the newer products that are out there. They have 8 or 9 different character options for this little box over here with very specific coloring that they want you to use. And it just worked out that for the original series, we had two options, Kirk or Spock. And it just worked out for a tricorder. It's like, who am I going to put on the tricorder? Of course, it's going to be Mr. Spock. Why would I pick anybody else, right? So just a little anecdote there for you that CBS's packaging is very specific about what they want, look and feel wise. And so I was able to make that be Mr. Spock. So let's jump over to this is the mini campaign book. This is the blue Delta on the front. The mini campaign is titled The Keyhole of Eternity. And this is a nice tight, it's not saddle stitch, it's a stapled booklet. It's a 44 pages. This is one of the few adventures or campaigns we've actually printed. Like most of our stuff's in digital, but the campaign and the starter pack, the single adventure that's in the Klingon GM toolkit, and this one are about the only ones you can get in print, other than the bigger anthologies of standalone adventures. But this is a mini campaign in a booklet, and so the.
And I get to ask you before you pass it up, because you're always so humble. Who wrote this?
Well, it was me. Back in the day. Again, this is like almost 5 years ago now. I was just the line editor and a writer for the line. I hadn't gotten to be the project manager yet, and Sam wanted me to write the campaign, and I was like, yeah, okay. And so I wrote this 3-part campaign, knowing it was going to go in here, and it just worked out that things moved on.
Well, I got to say that, and I just got to remark, because I interview a lot of the writers and stuff like that. I noticed that right away, because normally, Jim, you're excellent about. I mean, you have such a diversity of writers and artists and creators and stuff like that. I was like, wow, 3 entire stories written in a row by one person is actually rare now, because you really mix it up. And so I was like, oh, I did notice that.
Yeah. Wow.
I
got distracted by the art.
No, actually, can I highlight that? I actually want to share because I want to share an art piece which you talked about before, but I'm going to highlight it again.
Yep.
The first time I saw it, I remember I was.
I think I know what you're talking about, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share this screen, because I want Casey, your opinion on it. I want to make sure I grab the right one. Yep, here it is. Okay, let's look at this art real quick, and I'll describe it, and then Casey, I'll get your feedback on it first. When I was flipping through the art to Keyhole to Eternity, which is what Jim was just referencing, this was one of the pictures that came up that is set in a bar setting at the beginning of the adventure. But Star Trek has always taken a lead in diversity. And this picture, for those of you who can't see it right now, it shows Starfleet officers, the original series era. They're in a bar. There are, there's Andorians, there's Tellarites, there's a few other species in there. There's a human, and the human, I remember when it first came out, I immediately reached out to Jim. I was like, wow, who did this art? And it's because it's a man who's obviously African origin. He might actually be South American origin too, because that's a common setting, but he has the lip decoration, which we see in some of the native cultures. And to me, that was such an honor to human tradition. So Casey, you're looking at this art now. I don't know if you saw it before. Is this the first time? What are you thinking?
It's the very first time. And the first thing that I thought was, that is what Star Trek is about. It's about taking all of the traditions of Earth's past and presenting them in a positive way in the future. Representation is super important. And that's not one I have ever seen represented in game art before. Like, it's amazing. The rest of it, like, there's a Lurian in the background and they're playing Dom Dot. It looks like a super cool club. But that also says, like, this is normal. This is how these people hang out. They're just another part of the mix, and they're accepted for it, and it's great. And also the ring that he has in his lip has got this really cool design on it too.
I know, I should zoom in on it. It's so cool. Jim, talk to me about this. I remember it blew my mind. I'm zooming in on it now for those of you. You can always go back into YouTube and watch what we're looking at here. But talk to me about this piece of art.
Yeah, well, diversity and inclusion is super important to me in my regular life. And it has been important to me in my entire life, even before Star Trek that I can remember. And I knew, like, once I got into a place where I was starting to write art briefs for the game, and like I knew I wanted to not get more, but I wanted to make sure that the art represented the diversity of the Star Trek setting, right? Not just humanity, but just like all the different species that are out there. And in the command book, the command source book, that was the first one I got to actually write art briefs for. I knew I wanted to get a Maori character in there with the full beautiful facial tattoos and the whole culture in there. And so I said, okay, let's write an art brief of a new captain getting ready to take their first command, and they just happen to be Maori with all the facial tattoos and everything. It felt to me like it was so important to make sure that there were such a diversity of cultures represented in our artwork, and I wanted to do that for this one too. And I will admit, because this art hasn't gotten out yet, right? This is the first time people are really seeing it in this book, because we've held on to it for years. I really want to hear from people of African descent and South American descent, and like, if we got it wrong, tell me, because I'm really afraid of accidentally people thinking that we are appropriating their culture and using it inappropriately, because like, that's the last thing I want to do. And I tried to reach out to some people and say, hey, is this art okay? Can we go with this? And like their reactions were what Casey said. It was just like, yeah, this is something we haven't seen before. This is amazing. This is great. And I'm not going to be sitting here patting myself on the back, because like, I'm who I am, right? I am not Maori. I am not of African descent. I'm not of South American descent. I don't want to keep doing this kind of thing and accidentally be getting people pissed off and saying, why are they doing this? This is so wrong. So if anybody sees this, right, and has a problem with it, please email me. Don't hesitate. I will take the heat. But I hope that this is a fair approximation of somebody's culture that would carry on into the 23rd, 24th, 25th centuries, because that's part of humanity, right? Is we honor our heritage and our memories, and we carry that forward, and we find creative ways to do it. And I thought it fit, but
what I thought it captured for me is what Nichelle Nichols always said, or I should say, other Black African American actors had seen about the impact of seeing Uhura on the bridge back in the 60s. And to me, this was like, right away, it's like, oh yeah, there's a place for me in the future. And that statement alone is so powerful. And so for those of you who are playing the game, I know, Jim, we've talked about it a lot, is bring your characters into the future. Be there, represent. And it has such a difference emotionally. Like I said, this just got me. This piece of art alone was worth the whole buy, because it says so much about the future today.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah, I get emotional. Sorry. Okay. I'll stop sharing.
I don't know. Like it's been. I have to tell you. I will just emphasize again. This product has been in the works for so long that I think writing that art brief and getting that art commissioned predates Black Panther coming out, the movie Black Panther, of course, because there was one of the tribes in the movie very strongly featured those lip plates. And when I saw the movie, I was like, oh shit, I think we got it right. But I didn't want to admit it. I was like, oh, I think this is gonna be really interesting. Whenever this set finally comes out, people are gonna maybe make that connection. I don't know. I haven't heard yet, but it was neat to see that kind of parallel moment happen.
I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that one really sums up what Star Trek Adventures was about. That to me, so you hit that one on the mark. I haven't heard anything negative about it, but keep that kind of art coming, and I think it will make people be like, oh, I need to really get involved with this game. I think. Casey, anything else about that?
Well, I was just thinking about how, and this has been in the works for 5 years, right? Discovery is a show that has really driven that home about diversity and finding your place in the future. And I have seen so many young fans who had no idea what Star Trek was about come to Star Trek because of that show, because of the diversity and inclusion. And I think if they can then find themselves in games like this, they're going to do what we all secretly want to do just a little bit, which is live in a Star Trek, right? And you can bring Star Trek where you are here today by exemplifying a lot of those attitudes. And this is another way to do that. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And Michael, I don't know if you want to pull that picture up again, but it just dawned on me, just because we're talking about it. And because Casey mentioned the diversity, there is actually not a single I mean, there's a human in this picture, right? But there's not a single white human in this picture. and that's because you get the Andorian, you got the Orion in the back, you got, I think, a Selayan and a Lurian and a Tellarite, and then a couple others on the side. I can't quite tell what those are on the other side, but it struck me there was some episode of Discovery I was watching, and I was like, oh, this is, because I'm so sensitive to it in my day job and everything. I was like, oh, there's not a single white guy on this screen. That's amazing. What a different change of pace for Star Trek. And like, I know there was a subset of the internet that blew up and they were angry about it. And I was like, okay, get over yourselves. We've had white guys on Star Trek for 60 years. You can share the screen, all right, or you can let the screen go for a little while. But it just dawned on me that this picture reflects that. And again, this was 5 years ago. So this was even before most of Discovery came out. It's before Prodigy. It's before Picard, right? It's hard to remember that though.
Well, to that point, I want to add to that point too, because we know my second favorite franchise is Marvel, and Guardians of the Galaxy is just a bunch of, I'm all about the vigilante stories in Star Trek. I got the privilege of writing about that, and you could have a Guardians of the Galaxy level crew in Star Trek. It's so open that, again, the point of the gaming system is it's just a really good gaming system if you want to roll dice. So the rule base is good, but it's still open for any kind of stories you want to tell. And again, this picture kind of talks to that too. It's like you don't have to picture yourself as Kirk and that crew. You can picture yourself as whatever you want to play, right? Which is really cool. Yeah, powerful picture. I mean, look at that. Just one picture can evoke so much storytelling. I want to play this crew, actually. I wish you would have done a character sheet for him, but it's okay. I'd rather make it up myself, so that's okay. Okay, so talk to us. Let me ask you about the Keyhole of Eternity. You wrote the story. Give us some background on it.
Well, I don't really want to give too much away. I mean, not that it's a huge secret or anything, but like if there's any players watching, I don't want to give away what happens because obviously you want to be able to experience it, right? But it's good, in my opinion. It's Star Trek in the traditional original series sense. It starts off with some shore leave, opportunities for a ton of role playing. So like, I think I told somebody, take this to a convention, play the first part as your convention like game, because like this is literally all role playing. You could probably LARP this, honestly, because it's people hanging out playing Dom Jot, and then as they're hanging out and having a good time at this resort planet, weird things start happening. All of the weird stuff comes into play. It's like ghostly images or echoes in their mind, or they're hearing voices. Kind of get that weird stuff going on, and then the plot blows up from there. And the only thing
we were talking about LARPing before you go on.
Okay,
I have to ask Casey this, because what Jim just said, you could totally LARP this at a Comic-Con because it would feel like all the aliens are there. Talk to me about this. Are you feeling me? Talk to me about this.
No, you totally could. And the difference, the line between LARP and sitting at a table is so much finer than you think it is. Like the second you feel like you want to jump out of your seat and maybe act out an emotional scene with somebody, you're there. Too late, you're already LARPing. We gotcha. So yeah, doing it at a convention. I've had thoughts getting a lot of people in the same place where they're new foods and experiences. We have done LARPs in restaurants. You could do a LARP around like a diplomatic scene, very well-trodden tradition in Star Trek, right? Some weird food where you have to not offend an ambassador. Like there's all sorts of fun stuff you can work in there just for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be the whole focus, but giving yourself a chance to embody that and, stand up and move around and talk to somebody in the face is just a little bit more fun than sitting at a table rolling dice. And the closer you can get to that, the more free your players are going to feel. You got all that improv in there, and then your story just takes off.
Well, I'm really thinking about this. Going to Jim's story, I'm not going to do spoilers on it, but I did read through the whole, story, but that whole bar scene feels like Comic-Con. I mean, it really does. If you've ever been to Comic-Con, it's like, hey, you turn around, there's a new creature behind you. So it would be kind of fun if we used our cell phones as tricorders and use that for messaging during the game. I mean, I could really see that taking off with
You're stealing my thunder, man. That's exactly the type of idea to make it more interactive. We live in the future. If you've seen the latest episodes of Picard, the cool tricorders that they have on New Alternate Future, that's a Galaxy phone with a 3D printed shell on it. Like literally that's what it is. And it's, when you think about it, that's because of Star Trek way back in the day, right? Would we have flip phones and flat screens if not for Star Trek? So use it.
All right. Sorry to interrupt you, Jim, but I had to say, if I'm going to ever try LARPing, this might be the one I start with.
Yeah. Again, don't want to give too much away. The only mandate that Sam had for me, he said, I want you to write this campaign. And he said, it would be really cool if you did something with string theory. And I was like, okay. And I'm going to go do some research on what the hell string theory is. And, I hit Wikipedia, I got a couple books and I looked at it and I was like, I kind of get it. Like I was a liberal arts major, so science, I just didn't have the science. But I tried. and so I really went crazy with it and went wild with it. And so the adventure involves Klingons. There's an opportunity for space combat. There's an opportunity for hand-to-hand fisticuffs in the original series sense. There's an opportunity to have a first contact with an alien species, and there's an opportunity to do a bunch of other stuff in the original series, vein. But there's also an opportunity to do some really huge role-playing scenes. There's some very dramatic moments that will test your crew and challenge your crew, and hopefully, give you an opportunity to stretch your mind and your opportunities. And hopefully it's fun. I can't wait to hear what people do with it. Because like I said, we've been sitting on this for 5 years now, and like I've forgotten some of the details, but now that I've got it in hand, now I can reread it
wow.
again.
I'm going to give a spoiler, not a big spoiler, but I'm going to give a spoiler because I know me and Jim have a thing for focuses. And I pick all these books apart in a certain succession. And one of the things I do is just go through and look at all the NPC focuses. So I'm giving you kudos, Jim, because on the Orion Syndicate captain, you gave him 2 amazing focuses: boarding operations, actually 3, boarding operations, torture techniques, and Federation deck plans. And I was like, wow, like what cool. We talked in our previous episode actually about really using those focuses to drive narrative, and I can't wait to use this guy. Those 3 again: boarding operations, torture techniques, and Federation deck plans. How awesome focuses are those? So good job on that.
Tells you almost everything you need to know about that character just with those 3 things. Like, how did you get there, buddy? All right.
Federation deck plans, and he's an Orion. Oh my goodness. What are his connections? So that whets our appetite. I want to play that character so bad. All right, that leaves us. You forgot.
Okay,
you did that.
I'm rereading it. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. But Casey, you make a great point, and this is something that I've thought about, and I haven't figured out what to do with it other than just to think about it. But like, if you and Michael, you might be able to reflect on this, right? But when you've got a character and you're putting together a character sheet, even for like a notable or a minor character, like with a paragraph of description, a couple values, and their focuses, like that's almost all you need, right, to play a character. Because like who they are, where they're from, what's important to them by looking at their values. I don't mean to point at you. I'm not pointing at you. I'm just counting. And then focuses, like you're absolutely right. Like this guy's got torture techniques and Federation deck plans. Why does he have Federation deck plans as a focus? Why would he possibly have that?
It scares me actually.
You look at his values. One of his values is for the Syndicate. So he's all about the Orion Syndicate. He is Syndicate to the core. But then you read his little paragraph of description. He is an ambitious, low-tier Syndicate captain who is trying to earn a reputation for himself. So it's like, oh, okay, this guy's hungry, and wow. He is driven to study Federation deck plans because he's like he wants to go get himself a big old ship.
Well, and who's the dirt bag who's on his payroll at Utopia Planitia? That I could create a whole story.
Oh yeah,
over that. I mean, who's feeding him the information? Okay, I'm going to stop before I ruin it for my players. And they start,
seriously.
Yes. But again, I have to give it the power of Star Trek Adventures is when you create characters like this, that alone can create a story, and your players, one strange focus or one strange value, different values, different focus can make it a character so interesting. And so that was a really good design on that character, I thought.
So thank you, appreciate it. Last thing I'll say is, and I don't want to give this away because I think it's kind of an Easter egg, and I'm sure some people will figure it out fairly quickly, but I am a huge music aficionado, and I just love music in all of its different forms. And I was inspired by Star Trek novelists Dayton Ward and David Mack, who have written just a ton of Star Trek novels. And for the longest time, all their Star Trek novels were titled by Rush song titles, right? Like every book that they came out with was a Rush title of some sort. It was a song somewhere. And I was like, I'm so inspired by that. I've got to find a way to do that somewhere in Star Trek Adventures. Like I didn't know when I would do it or how I would do it or whatever, but this was the opportunity to do that, right? Now, I'm not as big of a Rush fan as they are, so I went with a different musician. But I'm curious to see if anybody, I mean, now that I've kind of revealed it, you'll pick up on it. But it was a fun challenge. It was a fun challenge. Fortunately, this artist has enough of a backlist and enough numbers of songs that I was able to get a nice selection of titles. And then I was able to kind of like write each of the key acts kind of around that title a little bit. Now, I didn't go so far as to write the chapter to fit the song, because that would have been a little too meta, I think. But I went with the titles. So I'm just, you know, because I'm such a huge fan of music.
Can I get one guess? Because I like music.
I mean, if you want to spoil it, that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm anti-spoiler. So
I mean, it's not really much of a spoiler because there's really no connection between this artist and Star Trek that I can remember. So, and no, if you want to guess, go right ahead.
Just tell me if I'm right or wrong. It sounds like Eric Clapton, maybe.
Not a bad guess, but no.
Okay, I tried. Casey, I'll give you the names of the songs are Troubled, Slow Burn, and No Way Out. Any guess?
I cannot, because the only thing that's pinging on me for No Way Out is David Gilmour, but that's not, the other two don't match. So
okay.
I get it.
And then, well, so I carried it through all three parts, right? So part two, the three acts are Signal to Noise, That Voice Again, and Downside Up.
I look forward to seeing people comment in the comments and say who this is. I'm sure it'll, when this comes out, we'll get all the
but the challenge is I got to encourage people, don't cheat, don't go to the internet, because of course the internet is the fountain of all knowledge, right? Like you could figure this out in 30 seconds if you type it in, and because Google will spit it out for you, no problem.
Let me in fact tell this to the audience right now. If you Google this instead of knowing it, you have no honor. No honor. No honor.
Funny.
Hopefully that will affect them.
So before we go into the last part of it, like, I know we've been doing this for an hour now. How are you guys doing on time? Should we break this up into two, or should we just keep charging forward?
No, this is good. I think people have been complaining for a while that ours are too short. So this is all you complain it's too short. This is an unboxing. You're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah. And I first thank you, Casey, for being a very patient guest, because I know there's still a lot of stuff we want to talk about, but thank you for indulging us. And it's actually indulging me, honestly, right? Because Michael's already opened his. He's already spoiled himself. But so we'll go on to the Rules Digest now. So this is the Rules Digest. It's got the gold Delta, Command Delta on the front, and a gold with a fade on the side. It's got the Star Trek Adventures logo. It's got Rules Digest on the bottom. This is a very hefty, solid. This isn't quite royal size. This might be a 6x8 book, maybe not quite that much, but it's smaller than the hardcovers we do, obviously, because we needed it to fit into the box. Really, I mean, really solid paperweight. Like, this is really heavy for a book. It's a paperback, a soft cover, so it's got the flex to it. It does have, like, if you're into the books, it's got that edging on it that is meant to lay flat without breaking the spine. So as you use it, the covers will bend, because there's a I don't remember what they call it. It's not a cut. It's like they've creased the covers in such a way that when you open it, it'll bend, right? But it won't break, and you're not breaking the spine, because the spine, like, unlike the hardcovers that are sewn, this is just glued. It's a really solid glue. Now, with a lot of wear and tear, that glue will probably come loose, and you'll just have to reglue it. Like, there's lots of easy ways to reglue books if they come out. This is a 304-page digest, so it's a pretty hefty book, right? The core book itself is 364 pages, so we had to do some cutting. We cut a lot of stuff out of the core book, especially all the Next Generation later stuff, because we wanted this to be really, really focused on the original series, because we knew this was going to be the original series product. We wanted to strip out as much as we could that wasn't original series, even to the point, and like, a lot of people don't care, but I do, because we put so much time into this. Like, Nathan Dowdell, who developed the 2D20 system for Star Trek, did a fabulous job of writing examples in the rule book for, like, as many things as possible. Like, here I'm talking about this concept. Here's an example pulled from canon, so that you understand it's not just talking about these characters. It's like Spock is doing this thing, Dave is doing this thing, Picard's doing this thing, just to make it clear that he's pulling stuff from the episodes and making it relevant. But so when we did this product, what I had to do is I had to go in there and I had to strip out all the Next Gen examples, all the Voyager examples, and rewrite them and come up with an example from the original series that still fit that rule concept, right? So all the little rules texts in here, a lot of them were original series in the core book already, which is great. It saved me some time. But we did go back through and did a top-down refresh on all that stuff, just to make sure that, like, if you're an original series, hardcore original series fan, and you're reading this, you're reading about your characters, you're reading about Spock and Kirk and McCoy and, you know, so on and so forth, and you don't hear about Picard or Janeway or whoever else, you know, just because we wanted to try to focus this on the original series.
I want to add a couple things too. Is, you know, some people may be like, well, why the digest? So not only does it fit in the box, which is great if you're going to gaming and stuff like that, but there's actually some new art in here that wasn't in the original, because the TNG style art had to be taken out. So I noticed, like, on pages 84, 85, 88, there's new, you know, art for Spock and Nurse Chapel and Andorians, the classic Andorians. So there are definitely, this one is totally a service to TOS. In comparison to the core rulebook, which has it all. And some people, you know, whatever they want to call themselves, they just love TOS and they play in the TOS era. So this is definitely dedicated toward that. Even the style of the art, there's no LCARs in here. It's all the original Duotronic, Isolinear, whatever that is. And then I have to shout out, because there's too many names, there's 23 writers and 22 artists. That this is the work of that huge of a group. So it's really a neat accomplishment. It's really neat book.
Yeah, so all the writers, like, we didn't for this, other than going through and editing it and refreshing all the rules examples that I just talked about, all those writers actually wrote the content for the core book, right? All that stuff got ported over and re-edited again. So I wanted to make sure that we honored their contributions to the first core book, because, you know, it's all in here, right? So we didn't want to lose sight of that. A lot of the artists, of course, were art that we commissioned for the game, but a lot of it also is because we're a CBS licensee. We have access to their art archive, and they have just a ton of art from all their different, you know, licensees that we're able to access, and which is really great, because it's free, right? It doesn't cost us anything extra to get that artwork. We can just say, oh, it's in your archive, we're dropping it right into the book. So, like, if you're a fan of the Ships of the Line calendars that have been coming out for the last 20 odd years, there's a certain amount of that art that is in the library that we can access. And so we were able to use some of that art in these books. But what I wanted to make sure we did is acknowledge who that artist was. We didn't want to just say CBS Studios, because of course it's all owned by CBS anyway. But we did our due diligence to try to find who actually did that art, right? Which designer or which developer was it who did that art, so that we could put their name in there. That's why you'll see let me see, Tobias Richter, Elaine Rivard, Steve Stark, a couple others that like the hardcore fans who, like, know Star Trek and, like, follow artists and through all different products and stuff, like, they'll know the names. And we're not intentionally misleading you by saying, oh yeah, we hired them to do art for us. Although in some cases we do reach out to them and say, hey, you did great art in Ships of the Line. Can you do some custom commissions for us? But we just want to acknowledge all the hard work that they do and did.
And I have to add one more thing, one more thing before we get into LARPing. And there is, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think I'm right about this, but on page 298 and 299, not only do we have tribbles as a minor PC, but there's even massive tribbles as a notable NPC. I don't think that's in any other book. And it even has, I mean, they're fully written up as a notable NPC. Am I right about that?
The tribble itself is in a couple books, and it's also in that free download that you can get on the website for tribbles.
Right.
But I think the massive tribbles, I think that's unique to this book. I'd have to go back and look, and I don't remember.
Yeah, I think
so we dropped in. There's the tribbles. Like, I couldn't get them in physical form, but we got a picture in there, so that was something.
Exactly. So in review, I have to say that this, we're going to talk about LARPing, and then I'm going to talk about the effect that this piece of art, I'm going to call it a piece of art, collector's edition, had on my group for the first time when we sat down to play it. Again, people who've never played Star Trek before, and one person who never even saw an episode of Star Trek before. So we'll talk about that, but let's go. Jim, is there anything else before we talk about how you could use this with LARPing before we pass it over to Casey to talk a little bit?
No, I mean, we could do a deep dive into the rule book and how we made changes to it to reflect the Klingon book and also the original rule book. But I think I've talked about that ad infinitum on other reviews and articles and stuff. So suffice to say that this was a lot of work, but very much a labor of love. And we tried really hard to make it as up to date as possible, because it took so long to develop this thing that the Klingon core book came out before this did. And so we were able to take some of the changes we made to the Klingon core book and apply it to this, so that this is kind of like the latest and greatest Starfleet version of the rules. We're not certainly expecting you to go out and buy it if you have to, if you want to, but all the stuff that we got from the Klingon book, I had like 3 days before this had to go to production to make any changes to it. So I grabbed a graphic artist and I was like, okay, we're gonna make as many changes to this thing as we can in as short a time as possible. I'll get the most important stuff in here. And we just cranked on this thing over a long weekend, I think, and got as much as we could into it. So that's the last I'll say, because we could go on for another hour, and I don't want to do that.
I like it
with you guys.
As is the case, as you go through these slowly page by page, there's always stuff to talk about. So people, if you want to dig in and just have fun and look at great art, great story, great rules, great RPG, this is a Tricorder collector set. And of course, if you're on continuing missions, by the time we air this, it'll be in April, and we will be having a second Tricorder box to give away. We had one in March, and now we're going to have another one so people can get it for free if they enter to win. All right, Casey, now that we've broken apart the Tricorder box set, what are you thinking?
Oh, it's so cool. So my first thought is my introduction to LARPing was through tabletop. As many people as I started tabletoping in college, and the more I got into it, the more I wanted to contribute to it. So you start making little props at your table. Depending on what you're playing, you might, wear a costume, you might have a funny accent, you might wear a weird hat. And Star Trek was that thing for a lot of people, especially the original series. Back in the day, you were gonna play Cowboys and Indians, you were gonna play Kirk and Spock and Klingons, right? Get out there, get your landing party set, really experience it. So I think this really comes back to the spirit of doing that for real. Like, you may not be able to go out in a spaceship and explore space, but you can go out in your backyard and scan a weird bug. So it's really close to sparking that imagination that you had as a kid and bringing that forward into adulthood with all the ability to have really emotionally impactful role play and play off of each other and see where a story goes. One of the previous episodes of yours that I listened to was about, kind of how to run a session and not have everything plotted out, but have your touch points that you want to hit, know how you want to get there, and let the story read it, roll along that way. TOS is a perfect venue for that. You think about how low budget those original episodes were, but they're kind of charming in that way. And you get to tell the moral stories without focusing way too much on the canon technical details. So it gives you so much freedom to just figure out who your characters are and then plop them into this world and let them see what happens to them. Weird stuff's gonna happen.
Well, so let me ask you. So I want to back it up, because I'm going to go from my feelings. I like walking people through this. Maybe they're like, LARPing, I don't want to do that. That's so uncomfortable. So tell me why. Why LARPing as an art form?
For me, LARPing combines all the things I love to do. I love to tell a story. I love to dress up weird and have a funny accent and make other people laugh or make other people have a feeling. And my favorite part is actually kind of the set design of it. So the step away from the table to the LARP venue is a lot of times it's immersive. You might have a decorated table or a wall or something with lights on it. And it just allows you, instead of thinking about someone's described this to me, you get to get your hands on it. And that's what I like to bring to my gaming table every once in a while. Like Cookie Monster teaches us, props at the table are sometimes food, but every once in a while, dropping something in that your players can get their hands on and pass around and talk about and examine just brings that little bit of magic to the table. And you know what? Guess what? That's LARPing.
Well,
I want to your table, but it's LARPing.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this because one of the things that I like about RPG, and Jim knows, people who look me up on LinkedIn, I'm a gamification expert. So I at work build learning into games, including RPGs, and people don't know they're doing it. They're role playing their job, and we're creating scenarios. And most people in corporate America are doing this and don't even know it. If they go to any really good learning session, they're role playing. And they even use the term role playing. And I think one of the big, as I go back and look at the neuroscience of why we do gamification in the work world, is because when people play, their guards are down, they're more open to learning, they're more social, they're pushing themselves socially where they wouldn't in real life. And so talk to me from a LARPing from that perspective too, what it does for the human condition. I know that's a deep question, but I'm going to let you take it.
No, it's exactly the core reason why I think think LARPing has stuck around. I've been LARPing for, almost 20 years at this point. The LARP that I run is 26 years old, which is astounding for what that is, like continuous game world. And the reason people keep coming back is not because of, the cool set pieces and the fact that they get to cast magic spells or blast people with lasers, but it's because of the emotional connections. The way that you get to tell a story, you actually get to step away from your real life and feel like you're being a hero for a minute and have a real story to tell that everyone else witnessed. Like it was super cool and everybody agrees that it was cool and they were there. You can have deep tragedy and process feelings that you wouldn't really be able to feel comfortable being exposed to in your normal life. One of the things I like to do at my table that brings rolling dice a little closer to role playing is give players agency to have bad things happen to their characters. If they feel like they're going to be safe having that story told and being able to influence that, they're going to let the big dramatic moment happen. And in your real life, you don't want bad stuff to happen to you. You're going to wall yourself off. You're going to be really careful and make sure that you're kind of stepping away from consequences. But in role play, you get to go all the way in the other direction. And LARPing is just an extension of that to say like, and I'm here.
Yes.
I can move around this space and see what's new.
I want to get definitely more into the safe space to experiment with bad experiences, with that. But I want to make the bridge over to Jim, because you, for years, have done acting and directing. What's the connection between LARPing and that?
I think just listening to Casey, I think the line is so close. The lines are so close, right? Because just listening to you, Casey, I was harkening back to my earlier days role playing Star Trek, not Star Trek Adventures, but just Star Trek in general. For a long time, we didn't have a game system that we liked, right? We had Last Unicorn Games and Decipher and FASA and my group, and we just did a bunch of homebrews, and we were like, none of these are really fitting the way we want to play the game, because what we were doing is we were almost doing LARPs at the table. We bought uniforms, we had the Playmates tricorders, we had the phasers, we had the music and the sound system, and we even went so far as to like set up my best friend's basement to look like the bridge, right? We had a big chalkboard that was the view screen, and we would actually draw stuff on it, like here's what you're seeing on the view screen, and we set up the easy chairs and stuff to look like the bridge chairs and all, just the ridiculous stuff that you do. But what it did was it immersed us completely into Star Trek. Like we were in that brain space. The moment we got into that room, we're like, okay, we're in the uniforms that we all went to the convention and we bought our uniforms together. We've got the Playmates toys, we've got the role play toys with the sound effects, and like we can feel it, right? We're in the moment. And what that did is it's exactly what you were saying. It made us so free to just role play the characters and just to react what was happening, what the game master was giving us as we were going. We didn't, the homebrew we came up with, we didn't have dice. We just kind of bullshitted the rules, and excuse my language, but we just kind of faked it and we just went for the drama. And it was so fun to do that, because it's like other role-playing games, like you're at the table, you're focused on the miniatures, you're focused on the dice, you're focused on the map. And I'm not disparaging it. I love to play that way sometimes, but it's a very different experience, right? To be going back and forth with the role-playing. And
I want to say what's fun about that.
Almost,
yeah, and what I want to say about that before, I always play the because again, I deal with so many students or participants in my classes when I build them at work, and you always have the cynical people. Mm-hmm. And I describe it to them like this. It's like, most people go to movies or they go to the Broadway plays and small playhouses, and the people up on stage, I don't know about any of you, but I've always felt when I'm watching them act, and really I'm having fun for them. I'm like, wow, they're having come on, anyone who goes to see movies are thinking like, that would be such a fun job. Come on, everyone can't be a movie star. Mm-hmm. You're not always going to have a big audience, but you could sit in the audience and you can watch, or you can participate. It's like going to play karaoke with your friends. Don't just sit there the whole time. Grab the mic and have fun. Sing what you want to sing. And that's where RPG in its different forms, whether it's very basic at the table on Discord or something like that, but all the way graduating to LARPing, I see it more as stage play acting.
It is really, yeah. And Michael, you said not everybody can be a movie actor, right? And I agree with that, right? I think the way movies and television are, you've got to have the whole package. You got to have a certain look, you've got to have a certain skill set, et cetera. But I think personally, just through my years of experience doing theater, I think anybody could do a stage play. Anybody can go audition and get on stage and do something, even if you're, you know, third spear carrier from the left, or you're a character role, or, you know, sure, everybody wants to be the lead, but let me be honest, from a, you know, career character actor, you don't want to be the lead. That's so much work. The people that are having the most fun on stage are the ones doing the character actors, right? Falstaff is having way more fun than Henry IV, because that's just the nature of the characters. But I digress. Anyway, so
no, you make a good point. Yeah.
What's that?
No, I want to focus on that again. Is the point is because I want to focus on the creative exercise. People think about, people are always so concerned about what other people think of them. And I can honestly say had my group for 28 years playing. And it's because of them that I became better at work, better in confrontation, better with creative, and great and a story writer. Because, and if I never had all those experiences, I wouldn't have been the person I am socially.
Nope, I agree completely. I think Star Trek and role playing and LARPing and theater all play into it. I mean, you become a stronger writer. I mean, even just reading a stage play, because stage plays are predominantly dialogue, and you hear how people talk to each other, and you read about how people say things without actually saying anything, right? Through their actions, right? And you know, I don't want to push the Shakespeare button. Like, Shakespeare is the by far the bona fide. Like, if you want to hear about you want to learn about the human condition, go read some Shakespeare and like really read it. But don't just read it. Go get on stage somewhere. Do a live reading. Just get the words in your mouth and feel how it actually feels to speak these words and feel what it means to do. Anyway, I'm digressing.
No,
it all plays into role playing, because that's how the LARPs were so good, is because all the guys in my group and the one lady, they all had a little bit of theater background. They all took electives in college. They all tried it a little bit just to see what it was like, and you know, most of them weren't enough into theater to continue it, but they all had some theater in their background, and they were all writers and they were all creative, and you know, just that whole thing. But they were all role players too, and I think that just worked out for us to get into this whole kind of LARP mindset of like, oh, we're gonna play Star Trek, and like present in all of our minds was, we're not just gonna play Star Trek, we're gonna go buy uniforms, we're gonna go get the props, we're gonna make this a whole production without intentionally, you know, having a director or whatever. It's just like it, because that's what we see on the show, right? Star Trek is a drama, a television drama. It's a stage production. I mean, especially the original series, right? Because of the sets and the way it was filmed, that was pretty much a stage production. You know, every
sets. And limited sets. Casey, I got to ask, where would you get started? Okay, someone you know is maybe nervous about LARPing, and oh my, like, how would you? Let's keep it in the framework of Star Trek Adventures, just because that's the audience who tunes in for this podcast. So where would you get started with LARPing?
So I want to pull back just a second and talk about why the Star Trek Adventure system is so great for this. Because if you think about what Star Trek is versus a Dungeons and Dragons game or other types of role-playing and LARP that you might do, Star Trek is an ensemble cast. Everybody needs to get their own screen time, right? And the best LARPs are collaborative. You're yes-anding each other. You know a couple of things about your character that you need to know to tell them how they're going to react to a situation. That's those values from the system. You've got your focuses. That's what you're really good at. You don't really need to look at the numbers so much. All you need to do is be thrown into a tense negotiation with a Ferengi, or, you know, a situation where things are going really wrong in sickbay, but you have to stay on the bridge because of tragedy reasons. You know, all of these things let you get out of looking at your piece of paper and then into, what can I do to push this scene over the edge into a really dramatic Star Trek moment? And that is your beginning point for live action role play. You're not just sitting there staring at a piece of paper. You're looking at the other person across the table or across the screen, and you just know the next thing to say to really push that into a truly heroic moment. You'll find it. Even if you're nervous about it, lean into it, because nobody's there to judge you. Everybody's there to lift each other and play. If you've got a really good table, it's all about going, I get you. Let's go even further with this.
So talk to me. We talk about it a lot, me and Jim, but let's talk about it in case someone just tuned into continuing conversation for the first time. Talk to us about yes and.
So yes and is a concept of taking the thing that the other person says as truth and building on it. Yep. If somebody says, my engineering station just went dead and I don't know what happened, you don't want to say, well, no, I'll just push a button and fix it. It's like, this sounds like a problem for our chief engineer to check out. Let's make sure that we route it down to engineering. Something weird is going on the ship. If you yes and it instead of no anding it, you build on what you're trying to achieve without feeling like you're shutting anybody down, which is the most alienating feeling in any role play is being kind of pushed to the side. Makes you feel like you don't matter, right? But if you yes and, you're listening to what they're saying, you're looking for ways to contribute to it. It's exactly what you do when you're a kid, you know, out in the backyard. And that's what, you know, we don't play enough as adults. That is why things like this, and it's not competitive, it's supportive. That's the other bit, right? You're not trying to top each other, you're trying to add to each other.
Correct. Collaborative. I have to, you know, again, going back to what you just said, the human mind learns the fastest in play mode. And how you prove that is because you can teach a 5-year-old 10 languages. You can teach an infant 10 languages if they're playing games with other kids on the schoolyard. Meet these army, what they call army brats, or these UN kids who learn different languages by playing soccer. There's studies on it. And as you know, humans, as we grow into adults, we stop and we kill that play center of our brain, which also slows our ability to be open to new ideas and to cut out bias. It's science. And so the fact with the LARPing and having that yes and mentality, example, I go into work with yes and. If a team member has an idea, okay, let's play that out to the end. Let's see how this works. And it creates an amazing, innovative environment, creative, profitable for business, right? And so you're saying that LARPing, how do you get people to get into that yes and mode if they're a little trepidatious at first?
So first you have to demonstrate it, right? You have to embody the qualities that you want others to see, but you also want to invite them. Pause, don't talk over people. If you see somebody be really quiet at your table or in your LARP, you want to kind of bring them in and say, you look like you're really having some serious thoughts about this. Would you like to contribute to the conversation and give them space to interact, or notice something that they're doing and compliment them on it? To really make them feel included. Another way to sort of build on that once you get into that attitude is you want to make it easy to step away from yourself, nervous, introverted human who's sitting at a table, and kind of into your character's shoes. So I usually start layering on, we call it the silly hat principle, right? Wear a thing. I know plenty of Star Trek Adventures role-playing gamers who don't ever meet in person, but they're all on their screens and they've got uniforms on. They're playing their characters. They're able to look at each other and, you know, through the view screen, right? Down in engineering, down on the planet. So giving yourself a way to have a physical touch point is also a really good way to remind you, I'm playing a character, I know these things about them, I know how to react.
I never thought
that gives you that agency, which is
that's a good idea.
Alias is the concept that you would call it for someone who's nervous. Just remind them, you're not being judged as you. You're the crazy Ferengi on the bridge, or whatever it is that you're doing. That's how we're going to react to you. So have fun with it.
Yeah. So I think it's worth mentioning then safe space, because we talk a lot about that as, you know, it's not just like everyone comes in and yes and then maybe you accidentally offend someone. So I think it's, how do you build your LARPing group into a safe space where you still have boundaries, you know, just not know, especially if you're playing with strangers, right?
Yeah, every LARPing session that we have, and indeed every tabletop gaming session, especially with people that don't know each other, has to kind of start out with this brief calibration where we have some easy signals that we can send each other to say whether something needs to slow down or speed up or stop. In person, we like to use hand signals because it's a really nice way to communicate that without interrupting anybody else's play, which can kind of come off as a negative experience. But online, we've done it with side channels in Discord or other places where you can let people have the play that they're going to have, but also kind of tune it as you go. And you have to make that something that you practice. Your GM or your lead players need to make sure to demonstrate that and check in, be proactive. Just because you're not hearing anything doesn't mean people aren't feeling things. So you have to be willing to both demonstrate that you can communicate and that you can also listen. So it's really about building trust and being open and being willing to handle something that's maybe unpleasant in a way that's positive and supportive, and say, like, I'm really glad you communicated that to me. I'm going to adjust. We're going to try again, right?
Yeah. Jim, with your extensive role-playing experience, what do you have to say about that?
I mean, it sounds a lot like the conversation we had about the Player's Guide and the Game Master Guide, where we talked about creating, having that session 0 with your group, creating the safe space, laying down the ground rules, having a conversation with everybody, making sure everybody's on board, and have the tools on hand. Like if something's not working or if something's going wrong and you're not feeling it, not just be willing to raise your hand and say something's not off here, but also to be aware of everybody else in the room with you and say, oh, that person got really quiet and they're looking really uncomfortable. Maybe why don't we I'll take the agency upon myself, even though I'm just a player or I'm just a GM, and say, let's take a pause here. I think someone's, and not so much call them out and say, hey, you're looking uncomfortable, but say, be more diplomatic and say, let's take a break here and go, get a drink or refresh ourselves, and then come back and then come back and talk about it as, well-adjusted adults and have a good play experience for everybody. But I mean, it sounds exactly the same concepts. I mean, we're here to have fun, right? And you don't want some dictator or tyrant, ruling over everybody and just making people miserable, right? So, but what I think is really important, and I mean, gosh, there's so much I could unpack here, but safe spaces, like one of the things I've really noticed over the years of being a writer and then, getting into the game and going to a lot of conventions, especially for Star Trek, because I've gone to a lot of different IP conventions, and like Star Trek is one of the, I don't want to say it's an oddball, but it's kind of unique in that, like, when you go to a Star Trek convention, like, it's going to be a safe space. Like, no matter who you are or what you look like or what you choose to wear, no one's going to be, the vast majority of the people are not going to be laughing behind your back or like wondering what the hell you are or whatever. They're going to be like, I got to get a picture with you. I love your costume. I love whatever you're doing, whatever. But like, especially like Shore Leave here in Maryland, I go every year. And like, it's like immediate apparent that like, even if this is your first time there, you are welcomed. You're part of the family. You could be dressed in whatever most obscure character you can imagine. Someone's going to know who it is, but it's just like such a welcoming, open company. And I think it just ties into that IDIC idea that like, no matter who you are, where you're from, you're going to be welcome, and it's okay. And that's like the foundational starting point of a safe space. And so like Casey, like, I'm just listening to you and Michael, and it's like, yes, you are both part of my tribe, and I'm just so thrilled that we're all speaking the same language here, because it's so nice to hear this, like all the stuff I've been thinking for 30 odd years, RPGing and playing and LARPing and stuff. It's like, yeah, this is literally everything that we're talking about, and this is everything that we want to have in the game.
Yeah, and going back, I always have to throw an illustration in if I can think of one, just so people can kind of tune into it. And when we're talking about safe spaces, if you're playing, I had a privilege of playing in a little jazz band once, and everyone's playing, digging it, and then all of a sudden someone hits a raw note, and you actually do stop and start again, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the artistic process. And so I think sometimes, whether it's LARPing or tabletop RPG or playing on Discord, like I play by post, the minute that you hear a raw note, stop. This is a creative exercise. Get back to where start at the chord structure again. And that's really what we're talking about here in creating the safe space, knowing that some people LARPing is going to be uncomfortable, that for them, for the first time, they don't know quite what to expect. If people out there are looking to LARP, maybe I can ask you, Casey, if they're looking for advice on LARPing, what's out there for them on resources? You probably know.
Yeah, like there are a lot of great Facebook groups for specific games in people's areas. A lot of games love new players. They love to kind of walk you through it and give you an introduction. There's smaller LARPing clubs that do things like play a 4-hour game on a Saturday afternoon, really short. If you don't like it, awesome, but they gave you a shot. Conventions are an excellent place to get into that. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for short form stuff. But I'm going to put in a plug here for a totally different game that I think meshes really well with Star Trek Adventures. It's called Strange Gravity. It's by a guy named Jay Treat. It's like you can buy it and download it and print it out. It's not a big kit, and it's made of cards that tell you your roles. You will find the rules very familiar. They look an awful lot like rules you might find on a Starfleet ship. You've got your warrior, you've got your captain, you've got your counselor, and it's what's called a GM-less game. So everybody gets their role and they get some instructions about how to build scenes, and then they do it together. You just tell that story. It's just like playing in your backyard on the weekend with a little more guidance. And if you have played or looked at the storylines for a Star Trek Adventures module, it would be so easy to hack that into something where you're, instead of sitting at a table, you're doing it in, a van in the backyard or some seats that you put in your living room. But getting into how to do that is really just a matter of saying, on Twitter or on Facebook, hey guys, I'm super interested in this. Can you point me in that direction? If you're a nerd at all, I guarantee somebody in your circle has got resources for you. And it's a welcoming community. LARPers love more LARPers.
Yeah, and I think now that people are getting outside, the pandemic is, hopefully going away, and people want to be in nature more. I think it's actually a really cool thing. I mean, again, I would never ever tell my nieces, nephews, kids stop pretending. And so even as adults, I think it's a very healthy exercise to role play in anything you do, even serious things. I think about like people in relationships, has a best friend and say, hey, I need to have this conversation with my wife. I'll be her and you be me, and let's see how it goes. It's not an unusual thing to happen in life. And you know, it's good to get away from electronics. So that's why I'm all about RPG, is because it's just such brain food. What else do you think, Casey, if you had any other tips for people that you want to pass on?
My tips for people as a game runner to bring more interactivity to your table are to mix in those fun little props, to step away from rolling dice to resolve conflict, but work in, you know, you can download little escape room puzzles or find alternatives to resolving conflicts and things that aren't dice related, that allow players among you that really like solving puzzles or deciphering, you know, language stuff, to look at that at the table and really get into it. And it gives you a little break as a game master, right? You've given them a puzzle and they can spend some time solving it. You can let them use rolls for hints if they need to, but it really breaks you out of that looking at a character sheet space. And then if you're the crafty type like I am, and you're doing Star Trek stuff like I am, look at the ways that some of the old props were made on those older series, and even some of the new ones. The prop makers were not using 3D printers. They were not using lasers. They were finding weird looking salt shakers, and they were making pads out of balsa wood and stickers. I'm not even kidding. That's what a lot of this stuff was made out of. And so it's really easy to get your hands on something that you pass around to your players and say, like, I've got an incoming message from Starfleet Command. You need to read it on this pad.
Hey, the phaser rifles in Voyager were balsa wood. So I mean, yeah, that's 25 years ago they were doing that. Right now the guns are all plastic anyways. So, and
there's something to be said for kit bashing. I remember I went to Dragon Con many moons ago, and this was when episode 1 for Star Wars came out, and I was like, I'm gonna dress up as a Jedi. I had a group of friends, and we were all gonna go as Jedis. And I was like, well, shoot, if I'm gonna go as a Jedi, I need a lightsaber. I've got to build myself a lightsaber. And it's like, I've got to build my own lightsaber, because I can't go to this convention with my own person, like some random thing I get off the shelf that everyone's going to have. So I remember going to like Home Depot or Lowe's or something. And I was like, okay, I have literally no idea what I need, because like I've never done this before. I've got a Dremel at home, and what am I doing? And so I just wandered the aisles, and I just found random little bits and bobs of things, and a length of pipe and some insulation and just random stuff, threw it into the cart. And somehow I made it work, and somehow I made it happen. But there's just a lot of fun to be had in just like kit bashing something and making it, throwing it together and go, oh, there it is. It just happens, right? I was going to say something. I had a question and a comment for Casey, and now I'm trying to remember what it was. It was related to LARPing. It was related to technology. I've lost the comment. The question, oh, now I remember what the question is. Of course, LARPing is at its best, arguably, when you're in person with people, outdoors or in an environment or something, you're doing stuff. But given that for the last 2 years we've been prisoners of COVID to some extent, you know, some more than others, and we're still not quite over that yet, what kind of strategies, whether it's Star Trek or another game that you're LARPing, like how do you make that work virtually?
Yeah, so I watched personally the whole LARPing industry explode with online LARPs over the past 2 years. I honestly personally can't participate a lot because I work on the computer all day and it just feels like work to me. But the creativity that people have come up with using Discord as a method of multi-format communication. There are a lot of online systems that will let you kind of represent a physical space with avatars that you can move around to do your LARPing activities while you're looking at each other over video. Yeah. I've personally played in LARPs where everybody got on video in full costume and did 4 hours of dramatic role play in a way that it was designed to facilitate, like we were, wizards talking through a crystal ball. Well, there's your crystal ball right in front of you. So it's something that you can blend even. We've got some gaming groups that are partially remote and partially in person. So you can set up a screen and have them kind of remote in and interact with you. Honestly, I think the pandemic's kind of been a little bit of a blessing for that, because live action does not mean that you have to be able to touch the person. It just means you need to be able to look them in the eye, just like I am with you guys. That's the important part. So real-time comms, again, we live in the future. They would have died for this technology back in the TOS film area. So we might as well enjoy it. And just remember that the best part of that is leaving space for other people and giving everybody at the table a chance to communicate and speak up. And if you're including them, then everyone has a great chance at a good time.
Let me add on to that question too, because I was talking about the metaverse, which and I said I was going to ask you this question, Casey. Where do you see it going now that we're looking at really interactive virtual environments. You know, I feel we're 50 years away from a holodeck. So where do you think it's going?
Well, you know, you say metaverse, but my first thought goes to, you know, the PlayStation Bridge Command game, where you are literally logging on with people and solving problems together. I think the technology for digital representation is really making great strides. I personally work at a company that does a lot of telecom stuff, and some of the technology that's coming out around that is amazingly cool. Just being able to connect with people and have, you know, immersion in a world that has nothing physical to do with it, and being able to customize that is probably going to be beautiful and terrible. You know, Star Trek's predicted that in both bad and good ways, right? You could get addicted to the holodeck, just like Reg Barkley, or you can figure out how to use it for solving problems. But I think that that is really going to transform how we collaborate globally in a really awesome way. And I can't wait to build some virtual stuff in virtual land to do more role play.
Yeah, it's amazing how much stuff is already built and could easily be translated into that environment, where I'm like, it's just waiting to be ported in there. Like some of even the walkthroughs of Voyager, for instance, it's like, oh, give me this and I can go wherever I want. Game over. You know, it's like, that's all. That's my own TV show come alive.
You know, Casey, it's really interesting that you said that LARPing has really exploded over the last couple of years with the pandemic. I think, you know, Michael, you and I have talked about this. I think the pandemic weirdly gave Star Trek Adventures a boost, because we had Shield of Tomorrow, and then a whole bunch of people were playing this game online on Twitch and YouTube, and, you know, recording their sessions, and they were dressing up in costumes, and they had the makeup, and they were just doing the whole thing. Like you could, I mean, makeup is so great now that you can do full-blown Klingon heads just with makeup, like with shadowing and shading and just being clever with your makeup. You don't need the prosthetics anymore. Or as much. You know, some people certainly go for it, but I mean, I know that I saw, because I've been following this game on social media for years now, because I kind of have to, right? But I saw a significant increase in online play because of the pandemic, but also because this rule set really lends itself to almost LARPing. And it's fascinating to hear that LARPing in general exploded because of the pandemic, and then Star Trek Adventures has just kind of gone right along with it. And I just think that's just amazing, because I mean, that's one of the things I love to do, because I'm working on this game, you know, late at night, you know, editing or writing or whatever. And if I have half an hour where I need to burn myself down so I can go to sleep, you know, I'll find some random person's recording or Twitch channel or something, and it might be in German or it might be in Polish or you know, whatever. I won't be able to understand what they're saying, but I'll be seeing them playing the game, right? And having a great time. It's like, oh, that's Star Trek, and that's stuff that we developed and did, and it's just amazing to see how well it translates to this. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because it's all drama. It's all, like you were saying, Casey, it's all video screens. But you know, while you were talking, and I'll stop talking, I promise. No, Michael, you know, Casey was talking about, you know, having the view screens. I was like, wouldn't it be an amazing experiment to do an Admiralty level campaign where everybody in the game is a captain, and you're just doing like an epistolary game where you're just doing captain's logs back and forth to each other. And like, you're just going through this campaign, and you're like, I'm a captain, you're a captain, you're a captain. And we're just having this, we're a fleet doing some exploration thing, and we're just communicating captain back and forth to each other. Well, what a great one shot that would be. And now I've got all kind of ideas.
Well, I mean, my dream here. Let's talk about our dreams as, you know, as we get close. Yeah. You know, I told me we'd have an extended session. This is a good one, but let's talk about our dreams as we start going out here. My dream is actually that a local playhouse, you know, I live in there's a local playhouse here in Castro Valley, California, near Oakland, south of Oakland. And it would be a dream if a theater company decided that they were just going to do certain episodes of Star Trek on stage and get the right set dress. And I've never been anywhere that offers that, where it's like, oh, this season we're going to do the first season of Star Trek Voyager, or the third season. Like, how fun would that be when it comes to taking LARPing to the ultimate extreme, right? What's your dream, Casey? Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, that being said, though, it'd be almost more fun to do your own original series, right? Like don't pay the royalties to all the writers and the developers and the producers who actually did the stuff. Like, here's your character, here's your original characters, with you know, decent uniforms and sets and props and stuff. And then just as an audience, I would love to pay you know, money for a ticket to just sit there and watch a troupe of actors do a Star Trek episode, an original Star Trek episode on stage, just off the top of their dome, right?
Well, because the point of what I think is cool about it too, when I think about the art dressing, like even if you got some people, some local artists to come in and say, hey, you know what, it doesn't have to be exact techno like you're seeing on a Discovery or Picard. Give us that retro feel. Because you just, and the lighting is just right, and you know, just make sure one of the actors walks into the little light beam across their eye during one of the romance scenes. You know, like there's so much you could do just from an artsy point of view and just pull in some drama off the Star Trek theme. So that's my dream, is to see that happen in a local theater somewhere.
You could do that, yeah.
Casey,
how about you?
I have an impossible dream, which is that that the Star Wars hotel succeeds really well, and CBS decides that they want to resurrect Star Trek: The Experience.
Yeah.
And then that they're going to invite me to do set dressing for that, which is really what I want to do. I'll never get there, but I did get to go to Star Trek: The Experience once when it existed in Vegas. I was a little young, but I cannot tell you the mark that it made on my soul when I walked onto the bridge of the Enterprise D. Like, that is a soul-shaking moment, and I think everybody needs to be able to experience that at least once if you like Star Trek, is to walk onto a set. There's a place up in Ticonderoga that's got the original series set. Yep. They're building an Enterprise D set. I am going to be there. But just having people be able to have that connection with the thing that they love, I think is, you know, I'm seeing good things out of Star Trek in the past decade, right? Let's continue that. And,
don't say never, because I actually, you know, I think, again, I'll say don't say never, because like coming out of the 70s, and Jim, give us your take. You probably have a better pulse on it than we do. I think the fans are driving the show creation again and the revival of the franchise. What do you think about that, Jim? I think, like, I can't believe, you know me, I can't believe that I have the chance to freelance write for an RPG that's Star Trek based. I mean, that's just like, what? And my dad is just like, over it, you know, he's like, my son, you know, he's just so happy. So again, the fans are driving this. I know that's the only reason that I know some of the writers you pick are all fans. These are people who are just doing stuff on their own, and you notice them and you go grab them. So what do you think about that with the future of Star Trek and what we'll see?
I think Star Trek has always been really fan driven, right? I mean, the Trimbles did that whole letter writing campaign to save the original series. And for the longest time, Paramount was, when they were doing Next Gen and DS9 and Voyager in production, like they were really focused on creating that program where anybody could write a spec script and mail it in. And if it was good enough, they would invite you in to pitch, you know, stories. So they've always had a connection to the fans. Even when, and this is crossed different licensees, right? When Pocket Books, Simon & Schuster did the Strange New Worlds short story contest for 10 years, they were like, we're going to open it up to the fans and say, if you can write a professional grade short story, send it in, and we'll take the best 20 or whatever and publish them in a book. And they did that for 10 years. And I mean, that's how I got my start. I got 3 of my stories published. I know Dayton Ward did too, and a bunch of other Star Trek novelists that's where they got started, because they had that opportunity. And that's because somebody in charge of Star Trek said, let's open this up to the fans and keep them connected. And I've carried that forward because, you know, I'm in charge of this. And as far as I know, Star Trek Adventures is literally the only Star Trek property right now that's open to unagented writers. Like, if you can write and have a passion for Star Trek, I want you, right? I want you writing for the game, because like I can feel it. I can feel that passion. If you have that passion, I'm going to find a place for you somewhere in the game. And so, but now we've seen it happen with the TV shows, right? Because I think the fans responded so positively to Anson Mount and Ethan Pike and Rebecca Romijn. I can't remember. I can't pronounce her name. What was it? Stamos, yeah. They responded so well to those characters and those actors that I think the fans kind of willed Strange New Worlds into being by saying, we want more of this. Let make it happen somehow. And fortunately, the bean counters at Viacom CBS said, oh yeah, we should probably do something with that. and made it happen. So I think as long as and like, I know it's challenging, of course, because Viacom CBS is a multi-billion-dollar business and they need to make money for their shareholders. And you know, ultimately it's a business, which is just where we are with this late capitalist society. You know, it's not Star Trek yet, but you know, all that being said, I think as long as they keep their finger on the pulse of fandom and they respect the fans, Star Trek's going to be around for a long, long, long time.
And that's a perfect segue, because here's what I love about LARPing. Here's what I love about tabletop RPG, Discord, whatever. And here's what I love about Star Trek Adventures is, before there was even a Marvel Cinematic Universe, I was writing amazing games. And then all of a sudden my players were accusing somehow that Marvel had stolen my ideas, you know, because it was like, wait, but that's like, we played that 10 years ago. And I feel the same thing with Star Trek RPG now. You know, I'm not into haters, because if a hater became a writer, they'd be mad at the haters, right? I always feel that. And so if you don't like something that's happening in Star Trek Adventures gives you the chance to write your own story. LARPing gives you the chance to write your own story and have that enjoyment. It doesn't make a difference whether it's published with 1 million subscribers or not. If you think you have a better story, practice it out with your friends. That's the power of RPG to me, right? What do you, Casey, final comments on that?
Yeah, the power of storytelling and the power of collaborative storytelling is you get to make your own reality. And for the period of time where you're all playing together, it is true. And there aren't a lot of places in the world where you get to decide what's true. And storytelling and role-playing are it. And that's why that kind of play is so powerful. And that's why it can leave a mark on you a long time after you walk away from the table or from the game that you're playing. It can change you as a person in a positive way. And if you're playing with a positive group and telling positive stories like the really unique and amazing things that you can do in Star Trek, you can actually make the world a better place, starting with the seed of telling a story together.
Yeah. Jim, final words on storytelling, LARPing, RPG.
I can't follow that. That was so great. That was perfect. That was like everything in my head that I wanted to do. And like, if I had one wish, we didn't really get to my wish, which is fine. I would love to be able to continue to take this game and refine it to the point where it continues to be a tool set to facilitate exactly that. You can take that core book, give it to any group of people, and they're going to go off and do their own amazing stuff. And they're not following the module as it's written. They're not worried about the shield points or the hull points or the amount of damage you're doing. You're just getting into the story and doing fantastic, amazing stories with your friends, having a great time around the table or out there in the world, out there in the, go in the forest, go on an away team mission, go on a landing party. Get out there, enjoy yourself, or do it over the screen, like whatever you're comfortable with, right?
Okay, I get to add one last dream on top of this. Then I know I wanted you to have the last dream, but I'm gonna go. This is for Al Spader. He's an educator and a freelance writer, and he plays with me in my game. And me and him always talk about, we wish we could build a curriculum for the American school system that is an RPG. So when kids come into the class, they're playing through history and math and empathy and social studies. And it's highly addictive. Like, that would be my biggest dream, is that they really take gamification into the classroom, as opposed to the Oxford didactic learning, which actually does not stimulate the brain whatsoever. And it's a class-based system, and don't get me started. But if RPG could be used, the technicality of it to really get people to play and learn throughout life, that would be an amazing education, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we talked about it. I know Star Trek is right there, because Star Trek's teaching all those values, right? Leadership, empathy, diversity. There's just so much packed into Star Trek. And if we can figure out how to make that work with this rule set and this game system, I mean, it may not make a ton of money. I don't know. I don't care about
you got to teach. Well, you got to teach the teachers. You have to start. Yeah. But anyways, enough dreaming. We're all getting sleepy. This is perfect because like Delta Flyers say, is Star Trek is ASMR too. It helps us all relax. I want to go ahead and give some huge thank yous out. First of all, I just always do the shout outs. So I do the shout out to the brick and mortar stores. So because we know, without them, they create so many new players all the time. They're really good environments. So I have a shout out to Phoenix Rising Games and Comics by Ben Eastman, Troy Mepians, a writer for Star Trek, of course, RPG, Voss Media Board Game Cafe in Galesburg, Michigan, and Benjamin Sloan says Fox Comics and Games in Marion, Illinois. All right. And then one last one, Matthew Wilson. He purchases all his physical STA books at Millennium Games. So we want to give a shout out to all of those brick and mortars who keep it alive in their neighborhoods. Jim, do you want to give a thank you out?
Yep. Two thank yous. Well, I guess one very big thank you and then one smaller thank you. One big thank you to literally all the production people and all the distribution people who are responsible for making this thing, and all the thousands of things that we made that look just like it, and finally getting these out into distribution and into the mail and all that stuff. All the people, all that huge giant globals, production chain and supply chain. Thank you for finally making this happen, because this has been a long time coming. So thank you for all the work that you did and all the COVID challenges that you had to face and all that stuff. So that's the big one. The secondary one is I also want to thank, even though it's a mixed blessing sometimes, I want to thank everybody involved in social media, because it's made the world smaller and then it's made the world more intimate. And it somehow enabled us to meet you, Casey. And I think this has been such an amazing episode. I want to thank you for spending 2 hours with us, rambling on about Star Trek and LARPing and RPGs and stuff, because that was just a happy accident that we connected on social media, and that you were so willing to spend your time with us and talk about this, and that you're so passionate about what you do. And you can hear the passion in our voices about what we do. And it was just a really happy, I just love it when things come together and it just works, right? I mean, not to pat myself on the back or pat you on the back or whatever, but like, this was so much fun. And I really enjoyed all of the things that you had to say. Like, I've spent so much time just nodding my head here. Like, somebody watches this on fast forward, they're going to see me doing this all night. It just makes so much sense. So thank you, Casey, so much for being here. Really appreciate you joining us. Do you have anyone that you'd like to thank to close it up here?
I mean, I have to offer the global thanks to everybody who's ever been involved in Star Trek, from the professional and from the fan level. I've been a part of it my whole life, and I wouldn't be who I am without it. And I have to thank you guys for inviting me on. It's been a great time. I hope to come back and do it again sometime.
Oh yes,
honestly,
oh, yes.
you got me whetting my appetite toward LARPing.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think that would be super fun. I'm not big into crowds, but I think I could find a park somewhere to do it in that could work out. Casey, this was amazing. Thank you again, Casey Hardy. If people have questions about LARPing, can they reach you on a social media site like Facebook?
Find me on Twitter at Casey Hardy. Yeah, I'm really easy to find. You can also find my cosplay at Talented Full Cosplay, but it's mostly just Ferengi stuff right now. So unless you're into Ferengi, maybe don't check that out.
I love it.
Everyone knows I'm all about the Umak. Come on, all about the Umak.
Fantastic.
Okay, this is probably one of our best continuing conversations of all time. I have to say, it really opened up a new avenue of role playing with the LARPing discussion, Tricorder box set. And I want to thank everybody for again supporting continuing missions and Star Trek Adventures RPG. So with that, we peace out. Two hands. I'm trying to practice IDIC.
Long and prosper. Be safe. Be well.
All right.
Cheers, y'all. Be well.